Hello, everyone, and welcome to this third match in the quarterfinals of the International Reparations Debate Competition for 2025. My name is Jermaine Barrett, and I'm delighted to be the chair of this match. I'm going to now invite my colleague adjudicators to introduce themselves, beginning with Joshua.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Joshua Atkins. I'll be serving as a wing adjudicator alongside Jermaine and Calicia.
Thank you very much, Joshua. Calicia, over to you.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Calicia Tiva, so I'll be serving as one of your wing adjudicators for today.
All right, thank you very much, Calicia, and of course, Joshua as well. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, we have two teams who have successfully gotten to this stage in the competition. We have on-side proposition, the team from Jamaica, Glenmuir High School, and they're going up against the opposition team, St. Joseph Convent, Port of Spain. They're in Trinidad. All right, so I'm going to now invite Joshua to tell us, first of all, who are the persons who are powering this competition, our partners and our sponsors?
So, our partners for this competition are the University of the West Indies, CARICOM, CARICOM Reparation Commission, Center for Research, Center for Reparations Research, the Jamaican Association for Debating and Empowerment, JADE, the Repair Campaign, the P.J. Patterson Institute for Africa-Caribbean Public Policy, and the University of Hull.
Thank you very much, Joshua. And we are incredibly grateful to our sponsors and partners who are supporting this very worthwhile competition. All right. So, again, Joshua, would you just unmute and tell us the motion that will be contested between these two teams? Again, viewers and listeners, the teams competing here, Glenmuir High School from Jamaica, going up against St. Joseph's Convent, Port of Spain, there in Trinidad and Tobago. Joshua, what is our motion?
The motion reads, this House believes that CARICOM should prioritize regional economic integration over reparation. I repeat, this House believes that CARICOM should prioritize regional economic integration over reparations.
All right, thank you again for that, Joshua. And I know my teams are ready and raring to go, so let's get the match started. This time I call upon the Honorable Prime Minister from Glenmuir High School to open the debate. Hear, hear.
Am I being heard?
Yes, you are being heard loud and clear.
Mr. Speaker, imagine being trapped in a burning house, fumes rising, walls collapsing, and instead of grabbing buckets or building an exit, you're outside writing a letter to the people who licked the match, asking them to help. That's the Caribbean right now. We're choking on economic vulnerability, debt, and disaster and disunity. But instead of joining hands to fight the flames together, we're too busy waiting on reparations, checks that have never come from countries that barely acknowledge the fire. We say enough. Today, we in the proposition rise to say CARICOM must prioritize regional economic integration over reparation. Because survival can't wait on sympathy and unity can't be delayed by guilt. Let's define the motion on our terms. CARICOM, according to the Oxford English Dictionary, is an organization of Caribbean nations and dependencies established to promote economic integration and cooperation, not reparations, not historical justice, but economic unity. To prioritize per Cambridge is to treat something as more important than other things. We're not saying reparations don't matter, we're saying integration matters more and now. Regional economic integration, from Merriam-Webster, is the unification of economic policies and markets between neighboring states. It means shared development, shared infrastructure, and strength. Over, as Oxford defines it, means with greater importance than. And reparation, as per Merriam-Webster, is the act of making amends or giving satisfaction for a wrong or injury. In our context, it's Europe paying for slavery and colonialism. A noble idea, but not a plan we can build our future on. So what are we really saying? We're saying CARICOM, created as a tool for regional cooperation, not retribution, must put its primary energy and focus into uniting our economies, or industries, or institution before demanding redress for the past. Because the truth is, if we wait on Europe to fix the future, we're asking for freedom while still wearing the chains. Mr. Speaker, we're not here to forget the past. We're to survive the present and own the future. Now here's the status quo. CARICOM's regional economy remains fragmented, and its 10-point reparations plan has yielded little more than regretful murmurs rejected from Europe. The problem, we are fighting for justice without first securing strength. That is why we propose this motion. Mr. Speaker, our team will present a four-pronged case. I will prove that economic integration is itself a powerful vehicle for achieving reparatory justice. That integration protects our region in the dangerous crosswinds of globalization. And my second speaker will cover that economic integration is a practical, proven path to regional strength and resilience, and that economic integration lays the foundation for meaningful, sustainable, and reparative justice. And my third speaker will deliver the final blow to solidify our case. Mr. Speaker, we stand confident in this argument because it is historically grounded, statistically backed, and strategically sound. Let's begin with why CARICOM even exists. CARICOM was born in 1973 after the collapse of the West Indies Federation. Its founding treaty, the Treaty of Chaguaramas, outlines four pillars: economic integration, foreign policy coordination, functional cooperation, and security collaboration. There is no fifth pillar for reparatory justice. As Sir Sheerdath Rampal, one of CARICOM's architects and former Commonwealth Secretary General, declared, economic union is not a dream, it's a necessity for our survival. The very DNA of CARICOM is not about redress, it's about resilience. Now let's get into it. Firstly, economic integration is itself a tool of reparatory justice. CARICOM's 10-point reparation plan calls for health systems development, educational upliftment, cultural restoration, technological access, and debt relief. Mr. Speaker, each of these can be pursued, and indeed are being pursued through regional integration. Health, 1 in 4 Caribbean adults suffers from hypertension or diabetes, disease linked to slavery-era diets. The reparation plan demands modern hospitals, but why wait? Caribbean nations spend between 6 to 8% of GDP on healthcare, much of it duplicated. Through regional integration, we could establish a single regional drug procurement system, shared research hospitals, mobile health units for small island states. And education, the plan calls for equitable education and scholarships, but CARICOM can do this internally. Though the average literacy rates are high, functional literacy remains over 30% in some territories, according to UNESCO 2023. Integration would allow us to harmonize curricula, launch a regional scholarship fund, and facilitate student exchanges between countries like Jamaica, Antigua, and Trinidad and Barbados. Mr. Speaker, to quote Professor Vereen Shepherd, Director of the U.S. Center for Reparation Research, reparations are about development. So is integration. Why wait for outsiders to fund what we can build from within? Secondly, integration shields in a globalized world. Small island economies are vulnerable. Hurricanes wipe out years of GDP. Supply chain stocks leave our shelves empty. Alone, we are soft targets. Together, we are a wall. Integration enables shared climate resilience funds, regional emergency food storage, and unified trade negotiations within the EU, US, and China. As P.J. Patterson, former Jamaican Prime Minister, stated, divided we are beggars, united we are negotiators. If we want fair trade for our bauxite, sugar, and services, we must be economically aligned. Now, Mr. Speaker, let's paint the world we propose. In our world, CARICOM completes a fully functioning single market and economy. We harmonize tax and customs codes, create a regional development bank, and invest in cross-border infrastructure. Once this foundation is built, we continue to pursue reparations, but now with a unified voice, economic clout, and policy readiness to absorb and utilize any funds received. Reparations, when achieved, are channeled into an already functioning regional framework, ensuring equitable distribution and high-impact outcomes. Meanwhile, in the opposition's world, they may say reparations are the key to funding development. But let's be honest, Europe is not keen up to write checks. In over 10 years since the launch of the CARICOM 10-point plan, no former colonial power has paid a cent in direct reparations, only symbolic gestures that the British royal family expressed in sorrow. Meanwhile, the Caribbean uses US 2.5 billion annually due to trade inefficiencies and duplicated infrastructure, according to the Economic Commission for Latin America and the Caribbean. Waiting on reparations delays the very development reparations are supposed to fund. In conclusion, Mr. Speaker, our stance is not anti-reparations, it is pro-Caribbean. We say secure the house before demanding payment for the damage, build the regional economy, achieve the goals of reparation plan ourselves, and then with unified power demand what is owed. Because if we wait on Europe to fix what it broke, we remain dependent. But if we integrate, if we unite, then we stop begging for justice, we gain the power to demand it. And that is why, Mr. Speaker, this House must prioritize regional economic integration over reparations. I thank you.
Thank you very much for that fine speech, Madam Prime Minister. I now call upon the leader of the opposition from St. Joseph's Convent, Port of Spain, to open the opposition's case. Hear, hear.
The points the proposition made, we're not asking them to assist us in outing their flyer. We're demanding that these arsonists are held accountable and justice is truly served. How can we out the fire ourselves when we can barely afford the fire extinguishers? To give up on this task would be to let these people off with a slap on the wrist. Not even a slap on the wrist, because there would be no justice served at all for crimes that are insurmountable. And in truth, I think we can all admit that even to obtain reparations would not even fully make up for what we need, but it's the bare minimum that we deserve. They spoke about the pillars of regional integration, and they said that reparations is not the fifth pillar. And it's my belief, and honestly, it's the truth, that the reason why reparations is not the fifth pillar of regional integration is because it is clear that reparations is necessary to obtain all of the four pillars. How can we obtain truthful economic integration when most of our member states are on a completely different GDP category than the others? How can we be able to thoroughly bargain on a foreign scale and obtain foreign policy coordination when most of these countries hardly respect us due to our economic disadvantage? How can we have human and social development when we live in societies that are still plagued by the effects of these colonial powers and what they did when they raped and pillaged our countries? And finally, how can we have truthful security when, once again, we do not have the money to undertake all of these fanciful ideas that the proposition spoke about? I agree, regional integration is important. It's not necessarily a debate of which is better or which should be denied. But the difference is that reparations is what we need to obtain full regional integration. These flaws in their logic only serve to cement the point the opposition is here to make. The point that is ultimately in the best interest of the Caribbean region. The point that has already been made time and time again. The point that reparations are the most important and first step to any sort of progress in the Caribbean region. We have waited centuries for any semblance of remorse, and they were right to say that we have yet to get that outside of base symbolic gestures. We have waited for centuries for any semblance of remorse from those that have caused us insurmountable levels of pain, and to suggest that we should wait even longer in the name of integration is ludicrous. While reparations can never make up for the emotional scars our countries are all riddled with as a result of these colonial powers, receiving these reparations is the only way to begin to inch our way towards social and cultural healing, one of the pillars of CARICOM. Without a symbolic gesture such as reparations to pave the way for future discussions, not weighed down by tension and distrust, we can never meet our full regional potential. Week after week, we enter into these discussions, and we are forced to emphasize that the point of reparations is not just the economic gain, but also the social value. Younger generations seeing even this slight attempt at righting a wrong that honestly can never be fully forgiven will benefit our countries more than any sum. Seeing accountability on such a grand scale invigorates cultural and regional pride. It unifies us even greater. It validates the shared experience that we've all had that are directly related to this tortured colonial past. We all live in societies where we continue to see the effects of this abuse. It's seen in our internal biases against people of darker skin tones, in the bleaching trends seen in various islands, in the prejudice towards people seen in jobs in the agricultural sector, in the way we dress, in our music, in the way we speak, and in our food. These scars run deep, and they're too deep to ever fully heal, but reparations can be a soothing balm that at least allows future generations to see one small example of good in a world that has so few. But don't be fooled. While the social implications of reparations are paramount, the economic necessity of it is equally important and essential. Both reparations and regional integration are necessary steps, but the issue we're faced with today is not deciding which is better or worse, but which should be tackled first. And today we, the opposition, shall make that decision simple by outlining why regional integration can never be fully realized without reparations in some way, shape, or form. Regional economic integration refers to agreements among nations to reduce or eliminate trade barriers and coordinate monetary and fiscal policies. It helps countries overcome divisions that impede the flow of goods, services, capital, people, and ideas. There are four main types of regional economic integration. The free trade area. This is the most basic form of economic integration where member countries remove tariffs and trade barriers on goods and services traded among themselves. Each country maintains its own trade policies with non-members. Next is the customs union, a deeper form of integration where, in addition to having free trade among member countries, they also adopt a common external tariff on imports from non-member countries. And lastly, the common market. In addition to a customs union, there is free movement of labor and capital. Builds on a customs union by allowing the free movement of labor, capital, and services among member countries. There are no restrictions on movement of factors of production like workers or investment. And this is where CARICOM currently is with the Caribbean social markets and economy. The last stage of integration is an economic union, which combines a common market with harmonized or unified economic policies, such as fiscal and monetary policies. Key feature of this is policy coordination like shared currency and joint decision making. And this is where the proposition final goals lies. However, we're still at the third stage and it's still severely stunted. Without the economic boost of reparations, we have countries with wildly different economies attempting to engage in equal partnership, something that can never work and in fact has failed in the past as seen with the Federation of the West Indies. The Federation was an attempt to distract regional leaders from the goal of independence, and it would have been successful if not for the burden placed on Trinidad and Tobago and Jamaica to bear the brunt of the federal economy due to their elevated position. It failed because these countries did not want to have to hold
Thank you,
up.
Thank you.
speaker. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Madam Leader of the Opposition, for that speech. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we enter that exciting part of our debate, the first period of cross-examination. I now call upon the opposition team to ask 3 questions of the proposition. And then when those 3 questions are answered, we will then proceed to have the proposition team ask their 3 questions of the opposition team. Team St. Joseph's Convent, Port of Spain, you may proceed with your first question.
I would like to ask, you said we will be one unified superior body, but I would like to ask superior body against who?
When did our Prime Minister say superior body against who? When did she say that?
That was not said. We said that would be a unified body when asking for reparation because economic integration would propel us in that stance. We never said it would be a unified superior body. Superior body to who?
That was not said.
That was not said. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Since the West Indies Federation failed, I would just like to ask, why do y'all think CARICOM would succeed?
It's not listen, we're making the case that economic integration needs to be a priority because it failed in the future. It did not fail in the past. It did not fail because the reason it failed is more reason why we need to push back and we need to improve it in a way that in the future it will never fail again, because CARICOM's vision is amazing. If you look at their vision, look at their statement, it is amazing. It is very it's so wonderful to see what we can achieve in the future if we should if the region should achieve economic integration.
All right, thank you,
Thank
speaker.
you.
Next.
All right.
And my
Final
third,
question now from, yes, St.
thank
Joseph's.
you. My final question is, do you think reparations should be pursued at all?
In her first speech, she mentioned, she said that economic integration would propel us into the stance. Has been explained multiple times. Our argument isn't saying that abandon reparations. We never stated that. We said economic integration would propel our stance in asking for reparations. It's paramount in that in such a case. What are you not understanding?
All right, thank you very much. And we now switch to the Glenmuir High School team proposition to hear their three questions posed to St. Joseph's.
What's more likely to help a struggling single mother in Trinidad next year? A paycheck from a new regional trade deal or reparations from Europe that might come in 50 years?
Might.
It's education, supporting projects. There are many ways in which reparations can help the Caribbean. It can even go towards helping regional economic integration. So it's not necessarily one thing, and it's not to say that it's 50 years we're waiting for this. There are efforts for reparations that are occurring today with companies like Lloyd's of London or Greed. So it's not some kind of fairy tale.
How do you expect fragmented microeconomies like St. Kitts or Dominica to utilize operations meaningfully without regional infrastructure?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that question? I didn't hear you clearly.
How do you expect fragmented microeconomies like St. Kitts or Dominica to even utilize operations meaningfully without regional infrastructure?
Okay, well, first of all, um, they do have regional infrastructure existing in those islands. It's not as if those islands have nothing in place in which reparations can be used to fund programs. And even so, under regional economic integration, small islands actually do suffer a lot from regional economic integration with the allowance of the free movement of labor and capital. This can harm small islands in a way which actually is
Also,
not beneficial.
this is why CARICOM needs to prioritize reparations so that it can be distributed and effectively
All
help
right,
our
thank you,
region.
speaker. Thanks.
Okay,
Okay,
last
you may
question.
ask. Go ahead, Glenmuir.
How does focusing on reparations help our region become more economically resilient in the face of climate change, global trade wars, or pandemics?
Reparations can help through debt cancellation, which is something we are extremely tied down by, and then it also it can through like support, it will strengthen our economies, which we cannot do as effectively with when we have such large differences in GDP among our countries.
Additionally, at the level of regional integration that we have now, how can this level of integration that is stunted by, once again, our economic disparities, how can that aid us in these causes? Reparations is the only solution that actually provides a guaranteed assistance economically soon compared to a pipe dream.
All right. Oh, great.
Thank you very much, St. Joseph's, for that response, and thanks as well to Glenmuir for those questions. We now continue our debate with the presentation from the Deputy Prime Minister coming to us from Glenmuir High School.
Am I being heard?
Yes, you are being heard.
United by the very sea that also divides us. This poetic paradox captures our Caribbean reality. We stand at a crossroads between looking back for justice or moving forward for progress. Today, we choose progress. Imagine a united Caribbean speaking with one economic voice, trading freely from Court of Spain to Kingston, and thriving with jobs and innovation. The opposition claimed that they really and truly they have an argument about how about why reparations should be prioritized over economic integration, right? However, we will say that that foundation doesn't even exist. No reparations have been paid. And meanwhile, the region loses billions annually due to trade inefficiencies and lack of harmonized infrastructure. Waiting on reparations delays the very development they're supposed to enable. Integration is the real foundation. It can be built now using the tools we control, not promises we can't enforce. Mr. Speaker, my fellow debaters, a pleasant good morning. As the second speaker for the proposition, I affirm that CARICOM should prioritize regional economic integration over reparations. This is not a rejection of justice, but a call to prioritize economic strength now. Our future must not be delayed by the past. We must act through unity and growth. My Prime Minister showed that integration is both a pathway to justice and protection in a globalized world. I will now reinforce our case by showing why integration must come first to make reparations meaningful and lasting. We agree, reparations are morally justified, but let's talk strategy. France's highest court dismissed a slavery reparations case. The UK hasn't responded to Jamaica's 7.6 billion euros claim, according to Jamaica, to seek billions in reparations from Britain over slavery. This is according to the BBC News in 2021. The Guardian claims that no European country has made a financial settlement to CARICOM. The reparations route is slow, uncertain, and dependent on former colonial powers. Now contrast that with regional integration, a process led by us already delivering results. CARICOM is advancing full freedom of movement and treaty reforms. This is according to the article entitled CARICOM Advancing with Free Movements, Treaty Amendments, published of March in this year. This is progress we control. This isn't about choosing one or the other, it's about order. First integration, then reparations. That's how we turn justice into lasting prosperity. Now let's turn to a new lens, readiness and responsibility. If we achieved reparations tomorrow, would we be ready? Would we have the financial governance, shared institutions, and regional transparency needed to invest those funds in a way that benefits all? Right now, CARICOM is still struggling to implement its single market economy even after more than 20 years. This means that even if reparations were granted, we lack the infrastructure to use them effectively. Prioritizing integration isn't about abandoning justice, it's about preparing for it. It's about putting the right systems in place to ensure long-term impact. Strategic readiness also means building resilience against future shocks, whether hurricanes, pandemics, or economic downturns. With stronger integration, CARICOM countries can respond as one, with pooled resources, coordinated disaster relief, and region-wide safety nets. Trinidad and Tobago, with its industrial base and energy sector, could support smaller neighbors more effectively if mechanisms for shared development were in place. Moreover, our youth need pathways to mobility, jobs, and entrepreneurship. A functioning CARICOM market gives them this. The 2025 decision by CARICOM leaders to allow full free movement of all CARICOM nations marks a historic step towards regional unity. If we enable our young people to move forward and build across the region, we create a generation that thrives on opportunity, not grievance. Justice must be more than symbolic. Reparations must be strategic, empowering our people through systems coordination and vision. Prioritizing regional integration ensures that when reparations do come, we're ready to multiply their impact through a strong, united Caribbean economy. Integration is how we ensure reparations create opportunity, not rivalry. It helps prevent infighting over who deserves more or who controls the funds. It creates a framework of shared accountability, joint planning, and mutual benefit. As such, this motion is not about abandoning justice. It's about making justice real, effective, and lasting. It's about the right steps in the right order. Integration, then reparations. Let us be clear. Prioritizing integration does not mean silencing the calls for reparations. On the contrary, it strengthens it. Our foreparents who suffered under slavery did not endure those horrors, so we could remain dependent on the conscience of former oppressors. As Barbadian Prime Minister Mia Mottley declared, in our unity lies our strength. This must be our truth and our rallying cry. Integration also fuels Caribbean pride. Let us remember that a 2023 IMF study titled Integration and Cooperation in the Caribbean showed that if CARICOM fully liberalizes trade and labor mobility, regional GDP could increase by 7.6% or roughly 6 billion US dollars. Let me repeat, 6 billion US dollars. That's where the money will come from. This is not a theoretical benefit that would help all been perfect. There are delays and gaps in implementation, but that's exactly why we must prioritize integration and not abandon it. Weak progress is not failure, it's neglect. And the answer is not to jump ship, but to steer it better. In closing, ladies and gentlemen, the proposition stands not against reparations, but for a stronger Caribbean that can receive and multiply justice. Why should we wait in the shadow of injustice when we can rise in the light of unity? Let us not be remembered as the generation that waited. Let us be the generation that acted, that built, that united, that rose. Let us be the generation that stopped begging for justice and started building it. This is our moment. This is our movement. This is our mandate. And let it echo clearly. First integration, then reparations. The time to lead ourselves forward is now.
Thank you very much for that speech, Madam Deputy Leader of the Opposition, Deputy Prime Minister, rather, forgive me. Now we go to the Deputy Leader of the Opposition from St. Joseph's Convent, Port of Spain, for their speech. Here.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Imagine trying to balance a table with one leg shorter than the others. No matter how beautifully you design it, it's always going to wobble, maybe even fall. That's what complete regional economic union in CARICOM looks like right now. Trinidad and Tobago, Jamaica, and Barbados may have strong legs relative to the others, but others like Haiti and Dominica are still struggling to stand. Reparations are how we make these legs even, how we create balance so integration can flourish and be even more beneficial. The proposition argues that CARICOM should be prioritizing further economic integration. However, this neglects some blatant truths that are staring us in the face. Truths that, unless they are resolved, will never allow us to achieve the full potential of economic integration. Prioritizing efforts to improve and move further into regional economic integration is simply trying to build more on a foundation that can only be remedied through various forms of reparation. You have to understand that the foundation is cracked. It must be mended before anything can be built upon it. So what is blocking us from achieving full regional economic integration, which the proposition argues we should try to overcome? While the idea of regional economic integration is attractive in theory, the reality is CARICOM members are not operating on a level playing field. The GDP per capita across the region highlights glaring disparities, with Barbados at approximately 23,000 USD, Bahamas at 24,000, while Jamaica is at 4,000, and Haiti is at a staggering of 1,000. Approximately. These differences are not just numbers. They reflect deep-rooted inequalities in infrastructure, healthcare, education, and economic opportunity. CSME allows for the free movement of labor and capital, aiming to boost business and investment throughout the region. Yet can this ever really be achieved properly with countries with such divergent economic circumstances are involved? The unemployment rate in Guyana is currently 14%. In St. Vincent and the Grenadines, it is 21.6%. In the Bahamas, it's 9.2%, and in Trinidad and Tobago, it's 4.8%. Such disparities suggest that while CSME aims to facilitate the free movement of labor and capital, the effectiveness of these policies may be influenced by each country's unique economic context. Can CSME truly succeed when nations are disadvantaged by the very mechanisms meant to help them, such as labor migration that could lead to brain drain, or the disproportionate benefit to wealthier states in terms of investment and business growth? You say that larger states like Trinidad and Tobago are supposed to help the smaller islands, yet let us just pause and remember that this is exactly why the West Indian Federation failed. They expected larger states, the mother country, England, expected larger states to support the smaller ones, which she neglected. However, this caused the demise, which is exactly why Jamaica left. As Dr. Eric Williams said, 1 from 10 leaves naught. You cannot expect the larger member states to take on the problems caused by England and the colonizing nations. Wealthier CARICOM countries attract more foreign direct investment due to their developed infrastructures and relatively stable economies. Barbados and Jamaica have significant inflows, bolstering their economic growth and business sectors. If the proposition desires for CARICOM to move on without even addressing this, and continues this concentration of investment, the economic disparities within the region will be exacerbated, and the less developed countries may struggle to attract the similar levels of foreign direct investment, hindering their growth prospects. Where do these economic imbalances in CARICOM come from? They can actually be traced back to colonial structures that shaped each country's development trajectory until these structures, which are the root cause of problems such as structural similarities across the region, limited intra-regional trade, unequal development, and fragile social services, and a persistent debt. Until these are addressed through reparations, we can never move forward successfully with regional economic integration. Under colonial rule, Caribbean territories were developed primarily for the extraction of resources rather than long-term economic growth. These result in the creation of monocrop economies which continue today. This means that CARICOM states have weak diversification and are highly dependent on a single export. And this is true for Trinidad and Tobago with oil. This is true for other countries with bananas or sugar. Reparations can remedy this and encourage agricultural diversification, which help to build these economies up and fix these structural problems, and then allow for proper regional economic integration to occur so that all of these countries can feel the benefits of it. Additionally, the debt burdens of the various CARICOM members seriously hinder the ability of the region to fully economically integrate. How can the Caribbean economically unify itself when members are too focused on financing their own debts which are rooted in injustice and colonialism? After gaining independence, many Caribbean countries had no choice but to borrow from institutions like the IMF and World Bank to rebuild their economies. The IMF and World Bank, which you say, says that if we liberalize trade and encourage regional economic integration, we are going to get $6 billion, as you quoted. Right. Well, these institutions are controlled primarily by Europe and the United States, so it seems like it would be very much in their interest for them to say, oh yes, regionally integrate economically, and we will not address these debts which you owe us and which you are struggling to pay off, debts which were unfair, debts which stem from colonialism. We have less than 6% say in these organizations when they vote. How is it fair? Jamaica only recently reduced its debt to GDP ratio from 144% in 2012 to 72% in 2023. The Bahamas is around 82%, while Guyana is a much lower 24.6%, according to the World Bank's data on debt. These loans come with high interest rates, strict conditions, and austerity measures and structural adjustment policies, which create more financial strain on our economies. As said by former Prime Minister of Barbados, Owen Arthur, it is as if the regional economies are caught between two worlds, one that is dead or dying and the other that is struggling to be born. How can CARICOM enjoy...
All right. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Leader of the Opposition, for that speech. And we go now to our second segment of cross-examination, beginning with the questions from the opposition team, St. Joseph's Convent, Port of Spain. St. Joseph's Convent, you may ask your first question.
Thank you. My first question is, what are the downsides to economic integration?
Okay, one of the downsides that we thought that you would have mentioned in your speeches would be the fact that economic integration could be delayed or perverted by corruption. And to that we say the same thing could happen to reparations. When the big chunk of change come and drop in our laps, corruption could easily make that money disappear like this. However, corruption in economic integration can easily be addressed because we're bringing our Caribbean community together, just as CARICOM's vision statement mentioned.
Right, and it's not just one country who is going to be in charge of, say, for example, the reparations. No, these are going to be...
All right, thank you, Speaker.
Okay.
Okay, so you have outlined this as a problem that faces regional economic integration today, facing CSME. Where do these problems that CSME faces today, where do these problems come from? Where does this issue of corruption, like, where does it stem from?
Could you repeat, please?
The problems that CSME faces today, problems like corruption, which you just mentioned, where do these problems stem from?
We didn't necessarily say that, oh, the CMSC is suffering from corruption. We're saying that could be an issue that could be a potential problem that could arise. However, we never say that, we didn't say that currently they're suffering from corruption. But to argue against that point, corruption for regional in the regional
I'm sorry,
economic
I can't
integration
hear
is not
anything.
likely.
I could not hear anything just now. My whole screen just glitched and I did not hear anything. I think you're frozen for me right now. Sorry. If you could just repeat, I'm so sorry.
Oh, all right. We will. Yes. So Glenmuir, you may deliver your response again. Hopefully, St. Joseph's can hear you the second time around.
We did not say that the CSME is currently suffering from corruption. We're saying that might be a problem that could arise. However, the rebuttal to that is corruption is not likely to happen because there even in CARICOM right now there are several positions that come against corruption. So for example, they have integrity officers that they employ, right? And not even just that, their CARICOM has multiple different representatives or diplomats from the various member states. So it's not like say, okay, Trinidad is going to control, is in charge of economic integration.
No, it's a joint effort.
And that supports self accountability, joint diplomacy, and so on.
All right, thank you, Speaker. Next question.
David?
Okay. Our last question is, if CARICOM prioritized reparations, would some of these management/corruption issues associated with reparations be solved?
Can you repeat that, please?
Do you think that if CARICOM prioritized reparations, that it would help to solve some of these corruption and management issues associated with reparations?
No, we don't think that.
Corruption is an issue that can. Corruption is a possibility in whatever organization that really exists. So corruption is something that.
And reparation can propel that issue because you're adding emphasizing, you're adding a heap of money to people who are already having bad intentions. However, economic integration can defer those issues.
Thank you very much, St. Joseph's Convent, Port of Spain, for those questions. Thanks for your responses, Glenmuir High School. Glenmuir, it's now your turn to ask questions of St. Joseph's Convent, Port of Spain.
Do you think
wouldn't the moral argument for reparations be stronger if we were economically integrated and therefore negotiating from a position of strength
and unity?
No, it would not, because European countries such as the UK, Spain, Belgium, they have all currently still, as you said, they are still denying to give us reparations. So why would they want to give us reparations 10, 20 years down the line when they would now see us as more economically stable and then less deserving of any kind of back pay?
Also, I'd like to add that by regionally economically integrating, we're just trying to further a system which is fundamentally flawed because of colonialism and because of the damage that colonialism has done. Therefore, the only really way to fix this is to look at these issues and address them through reparations.
All right, thank you, Speaker.
So I have a question. So if we're operating under a system that is fundamentally flawed, how is reparations going to dismantle this entire system? If it has existed since basically the dawn of time.
And you're suggesting that we build our future economy on the money from our former colonizers?
Well, reparations can through debt cancellation, which is a form of reparations, can definitely address the debt burden which many Caribbean countries are facing today, which keeps them back, which is directly answering what you just said.
Glenmuir, do you have a final question?
Yeah, I have an question. I'm sorry. Do you think former colonizers will be more likely to pay reparations to united countries or to this United States fighting among themselves?
No, because once again, as presenting as a unified front, these people who already do not want to give us any kind of justice will see us as undeserving. In their heads, we already don't deserve it. Why would they want to help us? Why would they not even help us? Why would they want to give us the justice we're owed if they think, oh, well, they're fine now, so clearly what we did was not that bad.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much for that exchange. We're now going to pause for 1 minute to allow the teams to refresh themselves ahead of the reply speeches. Your 1 minute begins now. All right, thank you very much. It is now time for us to continue with our debate. This time I now call upon the reply speaker from Team Opposition, that's St. Joseph's Convent, Port of Spain. The floor is now yours.
Thank you very much. I would like to begin by addressing what prioritizing reparations mean, as it does not mean just getting it. It means putting those systems in place to manage it properly. And economic integration is not one of those systems because the disparity between Caribbean countries is simply too large. To continue, for the last 50 years, economic integration has been prioritized. We have seen the formation of a multitude of regional economic focus groups, such as the OECS, CSME, and of course our very own CARICOM. Attempts at economic integration have been taking place since the 1950s, whereas true regional movements for reparations only started in 2013 with the CRC. That is 60 years later than economic movements and 200 years after slavery. Don't you think it's time to put it in the spotlight? I would like to clarify, we do not mean to say economic integration should be forgotten. In fact, economic integration should be supported by prioritizing reparations first, as stated by my colleagues above, who gave staggering evidence on how reparations can support the future of CARICOM. Furthermore, it took our ancestors all of the 19th century to uproot chattel slavery. Then it took us all of the 20th century to convert these legal freedoms into social and political freedoms. It is unacceptable to let these efforts go to waste just for economic union. As time stretches on, it becomes less relevant to the perpetrators who are more than eager to sweep the horrific foundations of their wealth under the rug. Never before has there been so much focus and attention on the reparations movement. Evidence of that is this very debate competition in which us youth are being invested, educated, and passionate about the issue. It would be a fatal mistake for CARICOM to let this chance slip through their fingers. In the words of Sir Hilary Beckles, the reparations movement is going to be the greatest political movement of the 21st century. There's nothing that can stop it because it is embedded in the search for justice, equality, and democracy. Moving on, the proposition claims that reparations can only be effectively achieved once we are on economic union, but that is solely untrue. The main thing that keeps our region economically shackled to Europe is debt. True economic integration is a distant thought until we are released from the shackles of debt through debt cancellation, which is the simplest, most important, and closest form of reparations. CARICOM would be hopelessly ignorant to not prioritize it. It is hopeless to pursue integration unless they are removed. After all, we all know debt is better than bondage. They also say, well, I would like to add, we think we are free now, but we forget the best slaves are those who think they are free. They think they are free from development, and they think they are free to develop and prosper, yet are still being choked by the economic chains of Europe. They also say reparations aren't guaranteed. But neither is regional economic integration if we don't fix the deep inequalities between us. And how is integration supposed to deal with the billions the Caribbean people lost to slavery? We're not begging the white man. We're demanding accountability for crimes against humanity. Slavery and colonialism weren't charity. And justice isn't a handout, it's a right. You don't want to build a house on broken ground. Regional integration assumes that we have equal footing, but CARICOM is still divided. We're not choosing between helping ourselves and seeking reparations. Reparations are how we help ourselves, because a region that's still economically dependent on foreign powers will never integrate on equal terms. It is not to say we'll never achieve economic integration, but that it is painstakingly long and arduous ways away. And ultimately, we must face the risk that the longer we wait, we may never get absolute reparations. We are already facing rejections from France and England. Do we think waiting is going to help that? This matter is more urgent than ever. Even if reparations are not guaranteed, do we not owe it to our ancestors to try to achieve justice, try to uphold a prosperous future, try to heal? You say economic integration is a future, but it will only further embed our flawed systems, which are rooted in colonialism, in our society. The way to stop this is through reparations, which is truly about moving on. We cannot move on without it. Colonialism is psychologically, philosophically, and systematically within us. Reparations would help us cut these ties, which still hold us back through acknowledgement of crimes, debt alleviation, and systematic reformation of our structures, which would disassociate ourselves from Europe. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that speech and for concluding the case. On behalf of the opposition team, St. Joseph's Convent, Port of Spain, we now go to the final debater in our match. This debater comes to us from Glenmuir High School, representing the proposition team. Here.
Am I being heard?
You are being heard.
Okay, thank you. A Caribbean community that is integrated, inclusive, and resilient, driven by knowledge, excellence, innovation, and productivity. A community where every citizen is secure and has the opportunity to realize his or her potential with guaranteed human rights and social justice, and contributes to and shares in its economic, social, and cultural prosperity. A community which is unified and a competitive force in the global arena. That is CARICOM's vision statement. That emphasizes the need for economic integration. Mr. Speaker, members of the House and to our opposition, who I would be so happy to educate but don't have enough time to, good afternoon. As the final speaker on the proposition bench, allow me to sweep up the scattered pieces of this debate, take us out of the realm of delusion and return us to reality and reason. Just to emphasize what my first and second speakers already made clear, let's get real. The Caribbean is on fire, and CARICOM's out here writing love letters to the same colonizers who lit the match. We are done with that. We're not here to beg, we're here to build. That's why we're right to say CARICOM should must prioritize regional economic integration of reparations. While we out these flames that burn our industries and economies, if and when help come, we should be in a place where we're already rebuilding what has been burnt. Reparations, yes, they're morally justified, but Europe hasn't paid a cent. Just royal stories and silence. Meanwhile, integration is moving, giving free movement, treaty reform, and economic alignment. That is the power we own. And let us not kid ourselves. If reparations comes tomorrow, we are not ready. CARICOM still fumbling in single markets after 20 years. No systems, no structure, no plan. Integration builds that. It's how we turn reparations from a hope into real impact. This isn't selling out justice, it's leveling up. Our ancestors didn't survive slavery for us to be professional petitioners. They've endured so we could lead. So let's stop waiting and start building. Integrations first, reparations next. No apologies, just action. So let's dissect the stance of our opposition. The opposition seems to believe that reparations would be the event that economically and socially integrate us. And to that I ask, if such was the case, why wouldn't the process, the campaigning, the petitioning of reparations put us together, unify us? How is reparations unifying us now compared to economic integration that's already taking steps in unifying us economically, politically, socially? The idea that smaller countries will suffer under integration is misguided. In fact, they stand to gain the most, because regional unity gives them the economic voice and negotiating power they could never achieve alone. Integration levels the playing field. It doesn't tilt it. I ask, so we're supposed to stay broke to prove we deserve reparations? That's not justice, that's begging. We don't need to stay down to show that we are wrong. Our economical stance should not tell Europe why we deserve reparations. No, what they did is why we deserve reparations. Why they did it is why we deserve economic reparations. Sorry. Our struggle is the reason for reparations, not the excuse to delay progress. Let's begin with the emotional centerpiece of what possibly could be the opposition's argument. Reparations are necessary to fix the historical injustices we're suffering from. To that we say, duh. Obviously, no one here is denying the importance of reparations. In fact, we're all for them being acknowledged and paid in full. But what the opposition seems to forget is that this debate is not about whether reparations are good or bad. It's about what we should prioritize and what we're asking. And they're asking us to pour our energy, time, and limited resources into an uncertain, drawn-out, legal, murky process with no guarantee of success. That, Mr. Speaker, is not strategy. That's wishful thinking dressed up as policy. Finally, to anyone who dare suggest that we're choosing development over justice, I have to ask, who said justice and strategy were mutually exclusive? Prioritizing integration doesn't mean we abandon reparation. It means we stop putting our future on pause, hoping that our former colonizers will suddenly grow a conscience and cut a check. We're not pawns in their emotional or moral awakening. Mr. Speaker, if we want to see the Caribbean thrive, then we must stop looking solely to the past for our solutions. Justice is not lost when we choose growth. Process is not betrayal. Prioritizing economic integration is not turning our back on history. It's choosing to shape our future. It's choosing to shape our generations. It's choosing to shape and take control of our economy and what we went through. The proposition, this bench, rest our case. I thank.
Thank you very much for that speech, and thanks to all the debaters in this match. At this time, we as the adjudicators will leave to deliberate, and when we return, we will announce the results and the rationale for the call.
Good afternoon. My name is Brittany McLennan.
And my name is Latonia Bassir.
My name is Yandy Williams. And we are the Glenmuir High School. Reparation means recognizing the traumas put into the psyche and structural arrangements through slavery and colonization territories, which inflicted not only individual injuries, but inequality on their subject populations.
They're not just about money. They're about acknowledging harm, restoring dignity, and taking steps towards fairness. Reparation challenges us to confront our shared history and create a future built on justice and equity.
It acknowledges that healing is not just about words, but positive action. It is a promise to future generations not to see the atrocities of the past under the rug.
For us, they represent justice, accountability, and a hope for a future built on truth and equity.
Without them, we cannot truly move forward.
We thank you.
We are St. Joseph's Convent, Florida, Spain. When you look at us 5 girls, what do you see? All coming from different ways of life and backgrounds. However, we are all converged here in this moment, not by chance, but from a series of intricate and purposeful decisions. Decisions made by people much more powerful than you will ever be, driven by greed, glory, God, and the hunt for gold. This is why reparations are so important, to right the wrongs of the past. Thank you.
The Center for Reparation Research is thrilled to launch this international reparation debate competition. This international reparation debate competition that we launched today for secondary schools is one of our most important projects. How do we engage youth on matters of reparatory justice? The change needed in the education system can only be advanced when the youth are engaged and their voices are heard.
Why is reparation so important in and for the Caribbean? Because time comes for justice for our ancestors. Time comes for the Caribbean to insist on the right to development, to be compensated for the violence against our ancestors. So outreach to the young people who have joined this movement is critical.
And this initiative is phenomenal. And you know why? Because it's engaging with young people. And it's young people that I believe, are going to be the future of the reparatory justice movement. The greatest weapon that there is in this whole fight for reparatory justice is the young people of today. I hope this debate spurs a whole new generation of advocates for reparatory justice, and the UK and the EU have got to make amends for the ills of the transatlantic slavery. This is going to be a phenomenal competition.
There is no mass movement that isn't a youth movement. And we certainly want reparations to be a mass movement. So it's really exciting, though, to have a regional / international debating competition. And I'm looking forward to your participation as you construct your arguments for and against, remembering that the 10-point plan for reparatory justice is our guiding framework for the areas in which we are demanding compensation, because we certainly want to impact the public opinion and awareness in Europe. So it's fantastic to have the United Kingdom participating as well.
So why is it important for youth to be involved in the reparation movement? Being involved in the reparations movement is critical to youth if one is to know their history so that they can understand why their societies are functioning as they are today. The future of the countries we live in are dependent on the current situation that exists today in our countries. And these current conditions were created by the past, including indigenous genocide, African enslavement, indentureship, and colonization. Being involved in reparations is about seeking justice, seeking a way to reduce inequalities in our own countries and then in the broader world. It's about seeking a more peaceful and balanced world, where global problems are solved in partnerships, not in isolation. I believe the sponsors are hoping this competition will allow our youth to gain knowledge about the past so that as young people, you'll be able to make better decisions in the future and make our countries better places.
We know that we need to understand stories about people that look like us. So the fact that so many of you young people have registered was so encouraged by your enthusiasm and your passion for wanting to enter this debate. It is so important. It's just at the core of who we are, that we need to understand where we come from, understand our true history, and having a debate competition on this particular topic is such an important milestone. To have a real conversation about repair, and the fact that our young people were so articulate with their presentations, and to ensure that we keep educating our young people, because you are the future of us. and are the Caribbean's a sustainable future. So congratulations, everybody.
We are looking forward to the debate. Encourage everyone to join the debate. Thank you so much, all.
Where is the justice for the 5 million enslaved Africans trafficked to the Caribbean? Think about it. Chattel slavery didn't just end, it left deep, painful scars across each Caribbean country. The deliberate underdevelopment, the brutal trauma and violence we inherited. It's time to repair this damage so we can build thriving, sustainable economies where young people like us can dream big, achieve more, and live better lives right here in our own home. Do you see why repair matters? Stand with us, join the calls for justice, and sign the petition for reparations at repaircampaign.org/petition.
It's very important that this is understood, because we can't talk about legacies before talking about what left those legacies on our landscape. Enslaved Africans were subjected to the worst atrocities imaginable: kidnapping, storage in filthy barracoons, the Middle Passage, forced drowning as in the case of the slaver Zong, branding with hot iron, including by the church, with SPG being seared into the flesh of those they owned, unrelenting field and factory labor, legal codes that rendered them non-human, and harsh punishments when they resisted enslavement, deportation, dismemberment, hanging, imprisonment, severe flogging, including of women and the children. According to Lucille Mathurin Mayer, and I quote, "Neither age nor pregnancy exempted women from corporal punishment. Rather, they were laid down in the filthiest place the driver could find for floggings. Child labor was rampant, and women and girls faced sexual violence." Orlando Patterson wrote in his Sociology of Slavery the following: "The sexual exploitation of female slaves by white men was the most disgraceful aspect of Jamaican slave society." Unfortunately, the church was complicit in this crime against humanity. Initially, Christian planters did not think that the African was of theological significance. According to Elsa Gavaya, and I quote, "Early English slave law almost totally neglected the enslaved as a subject for religious instruction, as a member of a family, or as a member of society possessing some rights, as the same rights as everyone else."
Did you grow up on Anansi stories? Yep, most of us have. But did you know that Anansi played a major role in our ancestors' survival? So let's talk about it. He's more than just a trickster spider. He was a means of inspiration for resistance.
Anansi's cleverness in outsmarting his rivals mirrored tactics enslaved people used in their daily lives. By pretending to be foolish or inept, a technique known as play fool for catch wise, enslaved people lower their enslavers' expectations and reduce suspicion. These methods, inspired by Anansi, are known as Anansi tactics, or in Twi from Ghana, Anansi Sem. Anansi outwitted powerful animals and even white enslavers using cunning and wit. During the plantation era, Anansi tales were shared in enslaved quarters and sometimes in front of European enslavers. These stories, recorded in journals, reveal how enslaved people used public performances to mask hidden defiance. Plantation whites often miss the rebellious messages in these tales. Caribbean Anansi stories depict him evading punishment, tricking enslavers, and a whole plethora of adventures which highlight the resistance and survival through Anansi tactics.
400 years ago, my people were dragged from their homes, tribes, families, placed on floating wood, and shipped across the Atlantic to what will be later described as the most inhumane act of all time. Cold, dark, uncomfortable, cannot describe the trip in ships where whips did not fail to miss. Injustice, rape and disgrace, blood rains, brute, force, ignorance, hate in their veins. Sweat and tears, labor revealed, produce from king fields only for the esteemed. 400 years of eroding one's pride, culture, heritage, value. 400 years of the iron chain, stringing up, leaving bare. Oh, but they never cared. Why fight when you would be met with sharp blades? So don't you dare cry out in fear. Why not plan escape with the plaiting of one's hair? Oh, the drums, listen, dance, communicate. For tonight we fight a battle not even death could spare. Blue eyes, white skin, master said that's beauty within. But guess what? Black, brown, gold, royalty, reparations we are owed. Them say hassa, but we say cassava. That's where we get the strength from to beat and conquer. For tonight we're returning to Ghana. You may say, I'm a descendant of slaves because of the rich melanin that gushes from my pores. But I came to tell you tonight, I am not a slave, rather the descendant of kings and queens. I am the embodiment of the divine. I do not chase, I align, I attract. What's meant for me already has my name on it. I am the personification of beauty, the expression of love, the creator of life, the acknowledgement of freedom. So go ahead, call me what you want, because when I die, bury me in the oceans where my ancestors jumped from the ships, because they knew death was better than bondage.
And here's what does need reparative justice. It is the seasoning period when we landed on the soil and they took away our names and our gods and our culture, and no slave system that we understand thus far has ever had that deculturalization process embedded in the process of our enslavement. So our enslavement was not just physical, it was not just culture, it was spiritual, because you took me away from everything. Who then must I look up to? Who then must I emulate? Who then must I kill myself in order to elevate you?
What is common about the wealth? A flag raises high, but the strings still pull from London. We sing our anthems in borrowed tongues, march to the beat of siphons' drums, celebrating a freedom that still pays tribute. Independent? What is that when the governor's shadow still lingers? They tell us, we free. Tell that to the bones at Reparation. The 196 who fought and won only to drown in chains. Our Negmawan. Do the people of North Devon not hear the howls raging for their home? The tide spits their cries, their names foam in fury, salted by a sea that will not forget. They call us independent, yet a crown still sits above 14 nations, still bent at the knee, still ruled by a throne built from our gold. They took our labor, snatched our names, they welcomed our craft, then cast us adrift. Windrush mothers, fathers, exiled from the empire they built. What is common about the wealth? Our persistent potency that perseveres through acute artistry. We carve language into legacy, turn sorrow into song, drum resistance as rhythm, sink steel into symphony. We are the architects of new worlds, the poets, the painters, the prophets, who make home in remnants still, who forge futures from fractured pasts. They took the wealth, but we are the riches.
And remember that chattel slavery of the African people was also genocide. This is not highlighted sufficiently. If you take my home island of Barbados in the Caribbean, the British brought 600,000 people into Barbados. 600,000 Africans were brought into Barbados. The black population of Barbados today is 280,000. How do you reduce 600,000 to 290,000 after 200 years? They brought 3 million into Jamaica. At the end of the slavery malarkey, there were just about 600,000. The survival rate of African people in the Caribbean was about 17%. It was horrendous.
The Conference of Heads of Government of the Caribbean Community.
But I will say to you, therefore, that the issue of reparations for the transatlantic slavery is an issue that we will take up with you, and that the appropriate apology and compensation is paid, and that the international community accepts that this should never happen again.
And yes, Honorable Deacon Mitchell, slavery is a crime against humanity.
The concept of reparations would take the question of development repair, and it would be multi-generational. What needs to happen is face-to-face discussions, which we deem as absolutely important, because if you can't see me or hear me, it is not appropriate to be able to make a judgment as to who or what I am and what I should receive.
Progress also means reparatory justice to heal historical wounds and climate justice to secure our future. We must be bold, demand what is old, and build a Caribbean that thrives.
Center for Reparation Research is thrilled to launch this international reparation debate competition. This international reparation debate competition that we launched today for secondary schools is one of our most important projects. How do we engage youth on matters of reparatory justice? The change needed in the education system can only be advanced when the youth are engaged and their voices are heard.
Why is reparation so important in and for the Caribbean? Because time comes for justice for our ancestors. Time comes for the Caribbean to insist on the right to development, to be compensated for the violence against our ancestors. So outreach to the young people who have joined this movement is critical.
And this initiative is phenomenal. And you know why? Because it's engaging with young people. And it's young people that I believe, okay, are going to be the future of the reparatory justice movement. The greatest weapon that there is in this whole fight for reparatory justice is the young people of today. I hope this debate spurs a whole new generation of advocates for reparatory justice, and the UK and the EU have got to make amends for the ills of the transatlantic slavery. This is going to be a phenomenal competition.
There is no mass movement that isn't a youth movement. And we certainly want reparations to be a mass movement. So it's really exciting, though, to have a regional stroke international debating competition. And I'm looking forward to your participation as you construct your arguments for and against, remembering that the 10-point plan for reparatory justice is our guiding framework for the areas in which we are demanding compensation, because we certainly want to impact the public opinion and awareness in Europe. So it's fantastic to have the United Kingdom participating as well.
So why is it important for youth to be involved in the reparation movement? Being involved in the reparations movement is critical to youth if one is to know their history so that they can understand why their societies are functioning as they are today. The future of the countries we live in are dependent on the current situation that exists today in our countries. And these current conditions were created by the past, including indigenous genocide, African enslavement, indentureship, and colonization. Being involved in reparations is about seeking justice, seeking a way to reduce inequalities in our own countries and then in the broader world. It's about seeking a more peaceful and balanced world, where global problems are solved in partnerships, not in isolation. I believe the sponsors are hoping this competition will allow our youth to gain knowledge about the past so that as young people, you'll be able to make better decisions in the future and make our countries better places.
We know that we need to understand stories about people that look like us. So the fact that so many of you young people have registered was so encouraged by your enthusiasm and your passion for wanting to enter this debate. It is so important. It's just at the core of who we are, that we need to understand where we come from, understand our true history, and having a debate competition on this particular topic is such an important milestone. To have a real conversation about repair, and the fact that our young people were so articulate with their presentations, and to ensure that we keep educating our young people, because you are the future of us and are the Caribbean's a sustainable future. So congratulations, everybody.
We are looking forward to the debate. Encourage everyone to join the debate. Thank you so much, all.
is the justice for the 5 million enslaved Africans trafficked to the Caribbean? Think about it. Chattel slavery didn't just end, it left deep, painful scars across each Caribbean country. The deliberate underdevelopment, the brutal trauma and violence we inherited. It's time to repair this damage so we can build thriving, sustainable economies where young people like us can dream big, achieve more, and live better lives right here in our own home. Do you see why repair matters? Stand with us, join the calls for justice, and sign the petition for reparations at repaircampaign.org/petition.
It's very important that this is understood, because we can't talk about legacies before talking about what left those legacies on our landscape. Enslaved Africans were subjected to the worst atrocities imaginable: kidnapping, storage in filthy barracoons, the Middle Passage, forced drowning as in the case of the slaver Zong, branding with hot iron, including by the church, with SPG being seared into the flesh of those they owned. Unrelenting field and factory labor, legal codes that rendered them non-human, and harsh punishments when they resisted enslavement. Deportation, dismemberment, hanging, imprisonment, severe flogging, including of women and children. According to Lucille Matherin Mayer, and I quote, "Neither age nor pregnancy exempted women from corporal punishment. Rather, they were laid down in the filthiest place the driver could find for floggings. Child labor was rampant, and women and girls faced sexual violence." Orlando Patterson wrote in his Sociology of Slavery the following: "The sexual exploitation of female slaves by white men was the most disgraceful aspect of Jamaican slave society." Unfortunately, the church was complicit in this crime against humanity. Initially, Christian planters did not think that the African was of theological significance. According to Elsa Gavaya, and I quote, "Early English slave law almost totally neglected the enslaved as a subject for religious instruction, as a member of a family, or as a member of society possessing some rights, as the same rights as everyone else."
Did you grow up on the Nancy stories? Yep, most of us have. But did you know that Anansi played a major role in our ancestors' survival? So let's talk about it. He's more than just a trickster spider. He was a means of inspiration for resistance.
Anansi's cleverness in outsmarting his rivals mirrored tactics enslaved people used in their daily lives. By pretending to be foolish or inept, a technique known as play fool for catch wise, enslaved people lowered their enslavers' expectations and reduced suspicion. These methods, inspired by Anansi, are known as Anansi tactics, or in Twi from Ghana, Anansi Sem. Anansi outwitted powerful animals and even white enslavers using cunning and wit. During the plantation era, Anansi tales were shared in enslaved quarters and sometimes in front of European enslavers. These stories, recorded in journals, reveal how enslaved people used public performances to mask hidden defiance. Plantation whites often missed the rebellious messages in these tales. Caribbean Anansi stories depict him evading punishment, tricking enslavers, and a whole plethora of adventures which highlight the resistance and survival through Anansi tactics.
400 years ago, my people were dragged from their homes, tribes, families, placed on floating wood, and shipped across the Atlantic to what would be later described as the most inhumane act of all time. Cold, dark, uncomfortable, cannot describe the trip in ships where whips did not fail to miss. Injustice, rape and disgrace, blood rains, brute, force, ignorance, hate in their veins. Sweat and tears, labor revealed, produce from king fields only for the esteemed. 400 years of eroding one's pride, culture, heritage, value. 400 years of the iron chain stringing up, leaving bare. Oh, but they never cared. Why fight when you would be met with sharp blades? So don't you dare cry out in fear. Why not plan escape with the plaiting of one's hair? Feel the drums, listen, dance, communicate. For tonight, we fight a battle not even death could spare. Blue eyes, white skin, Master said there's beauty within. But guess what? Black, brown, gold, royalty, reparations, we are owed. Them say hassa, but we say cassava. That's where we get the strength from to beat and conquer. For tonight, we're returning to Ghana. You may say, I'm a descendant of slaves because of the rich melanin that gushes from my pores. But I came to tell you tonight, I am not a slave. Rather the descendant of kings and queens. I am the embodiment of the divine. I do not chase, I align, I attract. What's meant for me already has my name on it. I am the personification of beauty, the expression of love, the creator of life, the acknowledgement of freedom. So go ahead, call me what you want, because when I die, bury me in the oceans where my ancestors jumped from the ships, because they knew death was better than bondage.
And here's what does need reparative justice. It is the seasoning period when we landed on the soil and they took away our names and our gods and our culture, and no slave system that we understand thus far has ever had that deculturalization process embedded in the process of our enslavement. So our enslavement was not just physical, it was not just culture, it was spiritual, because you took me away from everything. Who then must I look up to? Who then must I emulate? Who then must I kill myself in order to elevate you?
What is common about the wealth? A flag raises high, but the strings still pull from London. We sing our anthems in borrowed tongues, march to the beat of siphons' drums, celebrating a freedom that still pays tribute. Independent? What is that when the governor's shadow still lingers? They tell us, we free. Tell that to the bones at Reparation. The 196 who fought and won only to drown in chains. Our Negmawan. Do the people of North Devon not hear the howls raging for their home? The tide spits their cries, their names foam in fury, salted by a sea that will not forget. They call us independent, yet a crown still sits above 14 nations, still bent at the knee, still ruled by a throne built from our gold. They took our labor, snatched our names, they welcomed our craft, then cast us adrift. Windrush mothers, fathers, exiled from the empire they built. What is common about the wealth? Our persistent potency that perseveres through acute artistry. We carve language into legacy, turn sorrow into song, drum resistance as rhythm, sink steel into symphony. We are the architects of new worlds, the poets, the painters, the prophets, who make home in remnants still, who forge futures from fractured pasts. They took the wealth, but we are the riches.
And remember that chattel slavery of the African people was also genocide. This is not highlighted sufficiently. If you take my home island of Barbados in the Caribbean, the British brought 600,000 people into Barbados. 600,000 Africans were brought into Barbados. The black population of Barbados today is 280,000. How do you reduce 600,000 to 290,000 after 200 years? They brought 3 million into Jamaica. At the end of the slavery malarkey, there were just about 600,000. The survival rate of African people in the Caribbean was about 17%. It was horrendous.
The Conference of Heads of Government of the Caribbean Community.
But I will say to you, therefore, that the issue of reparations for the transatlantic slavery is an issue that we will take up with you, and that the appropriate apology and compensation is paid, and that the international community accepts that this should never happen again.
And yes, Honorable Deacon Mitchell, slavery is a crime against humanity.
The concept of reparations would take the question of development repair, and it would be multi-generational. What needs to happen is face-to-face discussions, which we deem as absolute.
Welcome back, everyone, to this the results of the third match in the quarterfinals of the International Reparations Debates for 2025. And boy, was this an exciting contest. The teams are competing here, Glenmuir High School out of Jamaica, as well as St. Joseph's Convent, Port of Spain, out of Trinidad. Yes. And of course, they're contesting the motion as to whether or not we should pursue a path towards economic integration of the Caribbean, or should we be strident and consistent, and prioritize an advocacy for reparations. All right. Now, in the proposition side, Glenmuir High School tells us that economic integration is a precursor towards economic development. And so they say to us that, well, first of all, let us prioritize that in the here and now because of some fundamental gains that are to be had, and it is far more feasible that way. They say to us that the kind of economic integration that they're looking forward to is terms of streamlining and coordinating trade policies amongst countries within the region. They also defend sort of the establishment of a regional bank and several other facets that they believe would bring Caribbean nations into greater harmony economically and integrate them even more. They tell us that it is morally important for us to do that because it is not likely the way we are pursuing reparations now for us to attain any real degree of success. They tell us that we have seen advocacy attempts in the past being done sometimes at a regional level, sometimes at a national level within the Caribbean region, and we've constantly been effectively rebuffed, except by the British monarchy, who has apologized. But we don't get that kind of a forward progression towards reparations as is outlined by the Caribbean 10-point reparations plan. Okay, so that's in a nutshell their case. St. Joseph's Convent, Port of Spain, tells us that, first of all, there is a moral imperative for us to be consistent, insistent, and demand reparations. And they say that because of the fact is there a historic atrocity of the worst kind was meted out onto Caribbean peoples and our African ancestors. They say, furthermore, the effects of that trauma ricochets into the here and now. So we're seeing the evidence of it as well, even here and now. And they point consistently to one of those economic baggages that Caribbean peoples bear, the debt, the heavy debt burden that straddle and threaten at times to break the backs of Caribbean economies. They say that that is a manifestation of the legacy of slavery and colonialism existing even now. They say to us that by extension, the underdevelopment of the Caribbean region is a testimony to the reparations being so urgently needed, in as much as our underdevelopment
is significantly attributable to this horrendous period of our history. Now, at some points, it seemed as though both teams were advancing arguments that made it seem as though the other team's solution is not feasible. So Glenmuir tells us that it's not feasible because European countries aren't likely to need us, aren't likely to pay us any real attention. And then they say to us furthermore that they say to, am I being heard? Sorry about that. Right. And so they say to us that, well, reparations is not going to be had anytime soon, if at all, if it is that we coordinate and organize ourselves in the way that we're doing it. And then, of course, the opposition, St. Joseph's, tells us that economic integration is not going to be had in as much as there are disparities with the economic standards, the GDP of Caribbean countries, the debt to GDP ratios that Caribbean countries hold, the levels of underdevelopment and the development, quite frankly, within the Caribbean region is so stark and divergent, and that is inimical to economic integration. One point that we had is there's a lot of concern that the panel has after the match with respect to the extent to which there was inadequate mechanization of some of the points that were made. So, for example, we hear from St. Joseph that, well, disparities in macroeconomic indicators, rather, would be inimical to integration. We don't know why this is the case, so we wanted to hear an explanation as to why it is that difference in GDP or debt to GDP ratios and so forth makes it very difficult for Caribbean countries to unite economically. We get the idea that Caribbean countries are necessarily inclined towards pursuing their own self-development, and so economic integration is not likely to be the case. And so that we thought was a little bit of better mechanization than simply the broad categorization of Caribbean countries as being economically disparate, therefore not likely to integrate. I think fundamentally, though, the motion suggests that there is going to be some integration or possible, or some success at reparations possible. And that is why the motions aren't configured for teams to defend the impossible or the positions that are hugely improbable. And so it would have been beneficial for both teams to sort of concede that there is likely to be some success if it is that things are coordinated properly with respect to economic integration or reparations. But advanced arguments as to why it is that even with this understanding and this acceptance, it is still not the best approach to take. All right, and so ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, with that analysis in mind, the scores from this match sees one team ending with 269 points as compared to the winning team's 281 points. Significant margin separating both teams. The winner of this match, this third match in the quarterfinals of the international reparations debates for 2025 is St. Joseph's Convent, Port of Spain. Congratulations to you, St. Joseph's.
Woo! Congratulations, everyone. My teammates, Christina and Rebecca. I know I'm not with you right now, but very happy from afar.
Yeah. Congratulations.
Okay.
And to Glenmuir High School, y'all put up a really, really good argument, and we really enjoyed debating with you all. And to the facilitators of this match, we really appreciate all your efforts. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes,
all right,
and it was an enticing match. It really was. I was on the edge of my seat. It was an enticing match. Congratulations, you do deserve it.
Thank you.
Thank
you. We hope to see you all in the future.
Yeah. It was certainly like that for us as the adjudicators as well. We thoroughly enjoyed it. And there's one major announcement to share with you. The best debater of this match. The best debater comes to us from the winning team. And that debater, the second debater, congratulations.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. All right, ladies and gentlemen, viewers all, thank you very much for tuning in to this exciting match. in the quarterfinals of the International Reparations Debate Competition for 2025, the inaugural staging. Well, we have one more match to go in this quarterfinal, so we ask that you tune in a few minutes from now, actually, to watch that second match of today, which is the fourth match of the quarterfinals. Stay tuned.